Narendra Taneja, India's leading energy expert. Narendra, in your face higher. What does that mean for India? Already downgrading your economic growth this year as of last week was downgraded.
To 8%.
Yeah.
Yeah, but 8% for an economy of India's size is huge still. And it's still the fastest growing economy on the planet. Even at 8%. Look at the size of our economy on close to $3 trillion nominal basis. On PPP, it's an $8 trillion economy. So if it grows 8%, this means everything to the whole world, a lot. So, well, that said, the point is, of course, when prices go up, it's a terribly bad news for our economy, for the consumer. But I think the important point that we have to understand, and we are beginning to understand it in New Delhi and several other capitals, that the world order in terms of oil, the oil world order has begun to change, fundamentally change. And we got to recognize, even if you look at, for instance, the immediate future, like the next 7 days or 7 weeks, we have to keep in mind that the global oil order has begun to change fundamentally. And the global economic Cold War has begun. It has started. It's there. Now we have to accept it, and we have to understand that since the collapse of the Soviet Union, or the end of the Cold War, oil has been the biggest beneficiary. Oil became practically, and for all practical purposes, it actually became a global commodity. Now that's being challenged, and this is going to be challenged. You see, so things have, what we are beginning to see is, and as I said, the oil has been the biggest beneficiary of globalization. What we are witnessing now, this week, is the beginning of deglobalization, which means that we will have the Western part of the world, or the OECD part on the one hand, including Japan, Australia, New Zealand, and and several other countries, and also part India, not fully, but part India. And you will have China and Russia and some other country on the other side. I'm talking strictly oil. You see, this is what has begun to happen. So far, everything was dominated by dollar, dominated by Western narrative. China sees this as an opportunity to be on the one side, to be seen with the West, but at the same time, start basically writing a new narrative for oil. And
where is given India? Where is India in this new world order that you are articulating? I'm still trying to quite understand from a point of view of oil new world order. China, of course, is the world's largest oil importer. I doubt it would be able to tolerate too much restructuring to an order in which it is heavily dependent oil, let's say, coming from the Middle East, if that was to change.
Well, good question. Good question. The point is, these things don't happen overnight. India is smart enough. China is smart enough. They can see it. But for instance, if Russia, launches this expedition and China chips in to the extent possible, India also sees some benefit it too, in order to create a new oil world order, which is more just, more equal. It's not entirely dominated by US currency or by the Western narrative. I mean, many other countries are going to basically, jump the bandwagon. Now, the point here is that, this is a slow beginning, but it is going to have impact on oil prices. When you see the news, for instance, the Russian minister, just a minister, not a company head, offers cheap oil to India, the West gets completely, they go crazy. What's happening? Not understanding the entire thing is misplaced, because India doesn't buy much oil from Russia anyway. We never bought more than 2% total requirement.
Without getting too swallowed by that rabbit hole of whether you do or do not take in discounted Russian oil. Obviously, the Ukrainians would prefer that you didn't, and would prefer that nobody does, including the Europeans. But the Europeans are now moving, it would appear, towards sanction. But nonetheless, you've brought up this idea of a new world order in terms of oil anyway, and then perhaps the geopolitics of that. You kind of hedged, as India seems to be doing. India's kind of in it, but not in it. Are you indicating that India would be geopolitically and geostrategically looking to realign actually as a partner to China rather than as what is generally regarded as a counter to China? As only a few weeks ago, you said that Europe and America needs to wake up and get to Asia to counter the rise of China. Are you indicating now that India would actually partner with China in this new order?
No, it's not that black and white. It's not that simple. The point is that, India is very closely aligned with the West. We are a democracy. Our economic system is the same. Education system is the same. So we are at home when we deal with America, with Western Europe, Japan, Australia, New Zealand. We are at home because we may look different, but we are the same in terms of how we look at the world, how we look at the thing. But at the same time, we are a friend and a partner. We are not a follower of any country. Problem is the West looks upon India as if they want us to be a follower. We are not follower. We are a huge country. We're going to see our interest, and we are definitely.
You have Prime Minister Johnson coming to you today. You don't have Prime Minister Modi going to London, right? So I mean, that tells its own story in terms of where the bigger shoe is.
Every second day, we have some minister, some prime minister, some king, some queen coming to Delhi. Every second day. We had just had a Russian foreign minister also. So that's happening because India is important. Some people in Africa is very important.
I think that is a recognition by the UK, one of the G7 permanent members of the Security Council, that India is very important.
No, the recognition is welcome, but the point is that we have our own worldview. Our worldview is very simple. West is very important for us. Democratic world is very, very important for us, close to our heart. But at the same time, we look at our other interests. We also see, for instance.
But you do recognize that you, at this moment, for obviously it's your choice, and nobody's denying that you have the choice, because as you say, you are a democracy and you are a part of the family of democracies. But as part of the family of global democracies, India is currently an outlier in terms of its position on the Ukraine-Russian conflict. Let's just leave that for a second and go to Laurie. Poor old Laurie. We got to give Laurie a chance.
You didn't allow me to speak. This is a very important point you're making. Yes, you view India as an outlier. We are not. We are with the democratic world. But at the same time.
No, but come on. You have to acknowledge at this moment. But you can't say what I'm saying is wrong.
You don't let me speak. That's not fair.
I am. Okay, go.
You're imposing your view on me. Don't do that.
It's not a view.
Democratic world.
Tell me one other democratic country that hasn't condemned this Russian position.
That's the problem.
Serbia.
Serbia? Okay, thank
you. Serbia, there you go. If you want another, let me know.
We are never going to be a follower. We are never going to be a follower. We have our own worldview. We are part of the democratic world, but we have our own worldview. You have your own way of looking at China and Russia. We have our own way. We respect yours. You have to respect ours.
The economic impact of elevated commodity costs, oil obviously at the top of the list, but gas, of course, and all other commodities. We're already seeing in China, due to COVID lockdowns, retail spending collapse by 3.5% in the first quarter, although GDP did grow 4.8%. India and other Asia, we're seeing the IMF and the World Bank downgrading global economic growth for all sorts of reasons. So I just want to get a greater sense from you. If we stay above 100 plus over the next 6 months, how is that likely to impact India's economic performance?
Well, you see, higher oil prices, higher natural gas prices already started impacting our economy. Economy can feel the heat. Industry can feel the heat. Even the ordinary consumers across the country can feel the heat, and some of them are already protesting. It's something which is sitting on the front page in newspapers almost every day. It's on the top of the agenda of major political parties. And there are political parties, the ordinary consumers protesting. So that's already happening. And with that, of course, post-Ukraine, we also see edible oil prices going up, aluminum going up, metals going up. So across the board, you see that there's a kind of a bad situation. And especially for India's economy, which is heavily integrated with the global economy. So if oil goes beyond $100 on sustained basis or stay there for a longer period of time, 3 months or 6 months, terribly bad news for our economy. And that's precisely the reason that we think that, it's important the world can get together and find a solution over Ukraine. But at the same time, being a student, geopolitics and oil both, I don't really see that happening because the Western agenda is totally different. The agenda is not only to find a solution, but the agenda is completely different, to create a new world order which is more dominated by United States of Europe and United States of America. And they're facing challenge from other countries. So what we are basically seeing a huge threat to oil prices, huge threat to natural gas prices and supply, and also at the same massive threat to energy transition. Energy transition and the climate debate is, these two are going to be kind of, the mass, the big victims of the whole thing. I mean, who would have time in saying, if oil prices go $125, who would have time for to talk about energy transition, talk about climate, and so on and so forth. So I think the entire thing has been disrupted. While ideally speaking, it will be important to find a solution in Ukraine, but at the same time, don't disturb the global economic order. But that has been already done. It has gone for a toss. Now we have to see, how the world react. And especially for economies like India, which are emerging economies, the challenges are going to be much bigger than the European Union and the United States or Japan or even China for that matter. So I think economies like India, Indonesia, Brazil, Egypt, and others, they're going to face much bigger challenges. So we will have to basically look at the and we'll have to look at the future, in terms of the windows which are more open to us and sustainable. While the West, you can look at the Russia is bad, China is bad, India is bad. You can carry on your own this thing, but we have to see how basically West has created this problem. They don't seem to be interested in finding a solution. But so we have to find, for instance, how to deal with those problems and at the same time maintain close tie with democracy, but at the same time look after our economic interests.
Look, obviously we have the IMF World Bank meetings coming up in Washington and the expectations ahead of that, a lot of fairly negative outlook for global economic growth. What are your thoughts on the immediate direction of the oil market? Do you expect this up and down 1 to 100 and 110, or do you think, as Omar might be indicating, we're going to break out to the higher side again?
Well, as I said, that the global oil world order has started already disintegrating, which means that, OPEC plus Russia that everybody keeps talking about, it will become irrelevant. Plus Russia will not be important. And if China from behind the scenes starts supporting Russia in terms of helping Russia to find buyers, across oceans, then I think it's going to be even bigger change. So which means that, you will have, of course, the market and all those things and OPEC, other things, players in the market, and prices may go up $125 per barrel, so on and so forth, depend on the Ukraine situation. But at the same time, you will have an alternative. Many developing economies, including economies in Asia and other parts of the world, will have an alternative if Chinese can help Russians to, for instance, in terms of tankers and insurance and payment mechanisms, which means that we will soon see the beginning of a new oil order, which is completely different from what, for instance, we have been used to since the collapse of the Soviet Union. So I think here we are talking about, on the one hand, the established oil world order, which is in play, and that's what you are focusing on. At the same time, I see the beginning of a new world order, which probably is going to be dominated by Russian oil, if supported by China, will become a strong force over a period of time. So we are back to the early 1970s, for instance, when India used to buy cheap oil from Soviet Union, but that oil always came from Iraq, never from the Soviet Union. If physically it was supplied by us, though the deal was always between India and the Soviet Union. So we are beginning now, coming back to the early 1970s. We're going to see two oil world orders, one dominated by the West, another dominated by Russia, China, plus other players. And who knows, some Western countries might also, behind the scene, directly, indirectly, may also join them, who knows? So we are basically talking of turmoil, massive disruptions in terms of the way we have known the oil market since the collapse of the Soviet Union. It's a new world now.